introduce themselves if they want, but of course, chat's disabled, so I'm going to fix that. Sorry, Jerry. I will work on that while Antara gets started. And just to give some background, Antara is a solutions engineer here at Port, and she will be walking us through how to get started and answering any questions. Same with Gus. They are very knowledgeable and will be able to help and answer questions and guide you through this session. So go ahead, Antara.
Cool. Thanks, Bree. Are we good to just hop in now? Do we want to wait a couple more minutes, or you think we're fine?
Um, if you want to wait till 5 after, that's fine. Whatever you'd like to do.
Cool. Let me just adjust my screens while we do that. And give you a second also to get the chat figured out. And just while we're hanging out, once the chat is working, if, yeah, like Bree said, if you want to hop in the chat and just kind of introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and maybe if you're familiar with IDPs or with port at all, or like have any questions or like specific things that you'd like to see in the platform or just anything that you would like addressed, please feel free to pop that in. And I don't know if they can come off mute, Bree, but if you want to at any point, just jump in and ask a question. Feel free to do that as well.
Hello,
Hello.
sure if you can hear me or not.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
Welcome.
so um, it looks like I spelt my name wrong anyway when I was signing up. My name is Derry Bradley. I'm a solutions engineer also actually at Circle CI. Um, I've been working in kind of the space of platform engineering, however, for about 5 or 6 years. I was mainly a platform engineer first at Fidelity Investments, where we were building out internal IDPs, etc. However, at Circle CI, we're a CI/CD tool. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the platform, but I'm currently building out integrations for a couple of demos coming up at PlatformCon, etc. And we're looking to leverage Port as the IDP, where we're actually going to drive a lot of that story from. I'm working with a couple of people in Port at the minute. I have a Slack channel, etc., set up with just a couple of names like Jim Armstrong is in it. Then there's a couple of engineers like Omri, yes, I believe his name is. But we're just building out that story. But I saw this webinar, I thought I'd come along. As I mentioned, I'm kind of pretty new to Port, but I've started to build out actions, etc., to start to tell my story. So yeah, excited to hear what we are going to chat about today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Derry. You might actually be a little bit more advanced in port than you think you are. This is going to be a pretty basic, like getting started session, but so feel free to like pop in and tell us about, what your experience has been so far. And yeah, thanks so much for joining.
Absolutely, appreciate it.
All right, so looks like we're a couple minutes past. So let's get started here. And of course, as I said, like feel free to come off mute, ask questions, pop them in the chat. Gus will be manning the chat, and I'll make sure to pause every once in a while as well and just check in. Um, but if everyone can see my screen, we can get started here. So let's go over a quick agenda first. Already kind of did intros, but I'll let Gus introduce himself as well, and then we'll talk a little bit about why internal developer portals matter. We'll do a quick, like, what your first 5 minutes in port look like if you would like to just sign up and create your free trial along with us right now. You can do that. Then I'll do a demo of a more kind of robust and mature implementation of port. And then we'll talk a little bit about Engineering 360, which is a recent release for us. And then kind of where you can focus for the max value if you're standing up an instance of port for the first time. And then we'll do a little Q&A. So a quick intro for myself. As Bree said, I am an SC at Port. I come from the observability space. So I was at New Relic and Elastic prior to this. And then before that, I was in consulting working as a DevOps engineer. And I'm based out of Austin, Texas. Um,
Thank you, Antara. So I'm Gus, Gus Shaw Stewart. I'm also a solution engineer. I'm Antara's counterpart in the UK. So I was previously at GitHub, and great to meet all of you. Thanks for having me along.
Thanks, Gus. All right, so let's dive in, talk a little bit about IDPs. So if you're here, you probably have some kind of platform in place, right? Some kind of mix of tools and technologies that you've put together to help your developers build and ship what your end customers are using. So the people who interact with that platform, right, your stakeholders can range from developers all the way to the CISO, and everyone kind of brings their different needs and looks at things from a different angle. So the goal of an IDP is to bring all of that together and have kind of one place where all your tools and all your people, regardless of role, can connect. And it's really that common ground where everything is going to meet your tech, your teams, your workflows, really your entire space. So your internal developer portal should bring a few things, a few key things together, right? Most importantly, all of your architecture and tools in one place. It should really reflect your data model the way that you understand it. So at Port, we're very unopinionated in the way that we approach IDPs. The idea is that your platform should make sense to your engineering organization. It should really be built on your team's DNA. And it also needs to offer different views tailored to your different stakeholders, right? So, it's called a developer portal, but there are more people who care, more people who are curious, who have needs, who want visibility. So it's really, we want to cater it as much as possible to all of these different stakeholders. And then you should also think a little bit about the unique workflows that each of these different roles and people need, right? So whether it's a developer trying to get a feature into production, or an infrastructure, or DevOps or DevSecOps team trying to simplify access to cloud resources, right? Maybe you're an SRE who wants to respond to incidents more efficiently, right? Lowering MTTR, or even just starting to track more advanced metrics across the full incident lifecycle, not just mean time to mitigate. And then finally, from a leadership perspective, it's about maybe tracking productivity or helping developers stay aligned with the standards that make sense for your organization. So your developer portal should support all of that. So later, we'll kind of dive into what to build out first, and you'll see an example of how to get started and also a more mature version of what a fully kind of built out portal can look like within Port. Um, just as a disclaimer, don't worry if the mature version feels like a lot. That's our demo environment, and it's meant to show kind of what's possible a couple years down the line. And it is, like I said, really just an art of the possible and not at all what your initial instance of Port might look like. And we'll cover that in more detail in just a couple minutes here. But just to kind of talk more specifically about Port, so in Port, everything is modular. So it's built around 4 core pillars of customization plus the key foundational elements. So first up, we have our software catalog, and we say software catalog, not just service catalog, because it really should include everything. So that means your microservices and monoliths, sure, but also your cloud resources, your vulnerabilities, your incidents, like basically anything that makes up your entire software landscape. Really, we want it to be a one-stop shop view for everything that matters. And then there's scorecards. So we don't enforce a strict definition of what it means to be production ready, and that's very intentional. So after talking to a lot of teams, we've learned that it means different things to different people. So in Port, you get the flexibility to define and build your own standards, and you decide what matters most for your organization. The next piece is self-service. So the goal here is to make sure that developers can access what they need when they need it without filing a ticket. So one click and they're good to go. But again, it's fully customizable. We don't dictate the workflows. You design them to fit your team's needs. And finally, we have workflow automation. So there are always tasks where you'd rather, remove the human from the loop. So think about maybe ephemeral environments or responding to incidents. So with Port, you can trigger things automatically, like spinning up a Slack channel or a Teams channel with the right people and context in place as soon as an incident occurs, or terminating an ephemeral environment, stuff that you really don't necessarily need a person to be involved in. And now beneath all of this are two critical building blocks. RBAC, role-based access control, it helps you control who can view what, but also who can do what. So it's very granular. You can set permissions not just by role, but by action, by approval rights, and more. And it's really designed to account for the full scope of a person's responsibility, regardless of their role. And then lastly, we have dashboards, right? You want different people to see the things that matter the most for them. With Port, you can build custom dashboards for every stakeholder, whether it's the CISO, a VP of engineering, a team lead, right? We don't assume what they want to see because every organization is different, but with everything in one place, they can get a view tailored just for them. So the next thing here is to jump into our live demo, but before we do that, I did want to just do a quick pause. I know I went through the intro pretty quickly, so just wanted to check in if anyone has any questions. How do we feel about Port in general so far? At least from what you've heard, does it feel like a product that you would be interested in using? All right, maybe let's jump into the demo a little bit and you'll have a better idea of what it looks like. So actually I'll start by walking through our onboarding experience. So if you've happened to have visited Port maybe like last year or several months ago, it has changed a little bit, so it might look a little bit different. If you go and sign up for Port right now, and I'll actually drop the sign up link in the chat. Let's see. I don't know if you have a cleaner link, Gus, that you can drop in the chat. You can actually just follow along with me right now and do the sign up process. So this is a free trial, and you'll just kind of have that available to you, and we can walk through the sign up together right now. Okay, so you're going to start off by putting in an email address. Nord form. Do it again. And you do need to use, just as a disclaimer, a corporate email to sign up. You cannot use your personal email. Let me just stop sharing my screen for a second and walk through this. And I think Gus has the chat link, so if everyone wants to just take a second and sign in.
Yeah, I just put the sign up link in the chat.
But can people see the chat, just not use it? I'm not sure.
No, I don't think we have access to even see the chat. So maybe if you
All right.
put it in the Q&A section, we'll get access to
Yeah,
it.
that's what I was trying to do.
Okay. So while we do that, I'm just going to walk through these initial steps. So you'll start off just, entering your name. And then you'll have to do like an organization name. I'm just going to do webinar test for right now. And then this is where you would invite your teammates. You can also always add teammates later on. You do not need to do this immediately. And then here is where you will choose your provider. So we're going to do GitHub just to start off with. And then at the very beginning, we also want to understand which tools your organization uses. So you'll see, a lot of options here: GitHub, Jira, Sneak, PagerDuty, SonarQube. Like we have a lot of integrations out of the box. In fact, Gus, if you can maybe drop the chat for all of our out of the box integrations. So what this will do when I just click through the different integrations that my org uses, it'll basically create a checklist for me. So Port isn't asking you to configure or integrate anything right now. We're just going to create a checklist so you can come back to those steps when you're ready. So right now, Port is just setting up the portal. Again, if you've maybe used Port in the past, like maybe last year, you'll remember the homepage had some sample data and may have created, and you may even have created catalog pages or blueprints, but we've changed that up a little bit. So we'll see in a second. After creation of the portal, Port will kind of automatically build out some pre-configured pages for you. And we'll walk you through those steps to get your full service catalog. And I'll also demo part of that today, just not fully in depth. While this is going, just want to check in, are people able to see the chat now?
Doesn't look like it, but I put, what I'll do is I'll post in the Q&A, I'll post just below Bree's question in there. So anything that we need, I'll post in that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and also we're recording this webinar, so if you need to come back and walk through the steps later on, you can definitely do that. But as you can see, as soon as I log in, I already have a few nicely organized catalog pages that are set up for me. So I have my services, workloads, environments, users, and teams. Right, you can actually just straight up connect SSO, set up your teams. There's also a plan my day view, more geared for developers. And then also a manage my team's work, right? Great for leadership, and then also an incidents view. And all of this, these catalog pages have been set up for you, but obviously they aren't populated because I haven't connected any of my data sources yet. But as I mentioned, when I selected my tools in the beginning during the setup, Port will create a checklist for you, which you can see here. And then if you click on any of them, it'll walk you through the integration steps to get that data in. If you need to add any additional tools, you can click on new and it'll take you through our entire out-of-the-box integrations page. So again, what's shown here will also kind of change dynamically based on those tools that you select. Again, take a look at that onboarding checklist, right? You have two options for integrations. We have the Port hosted integration where you just drop in your API token, or you can do a self-hosted integration. So this is ideal if you're a little bit more security conscious. That's our original push-based model. We have the steps in here. You can just select that option and you're good to go. And then once all of that is in place, you can actually start building things. So if we head over to self-service, here you can do things like registering a user. You can start actually owning a service. So for example, here you can, for this example team, you can select that. You can select from the list of available services. This will again be more populated after I start ingesting more data from GitHub, for example. You'll also see here some more out-of-the-box self-service actions. So for example, ignoring a Sneak issue because I selected Sneak as one of the tools that I use. Let's pop it open here so I can select a vulnerability, choose my reason type, and then submit that for approval. So this is actually interacting directly with the Sneak API. So let's actually open up one of the backends for these self-service actions and take a look at what's happening. So under the hood, Port is placing an API request to the Sneak API and sending this information with your input that you put in. So your vulnerability and the reason that you put in, we're sending that to Port. or sorry, we're sending that to the Sneak API. We do the same thing with PagerDuty, letting you know that you can either acknowledge or trigger incidents right from within port. So that's kind of how that's working in the back end. And remember, all of these flows work out of the box based on the tools that you selected during onboarding. So very easy to kind of get started and build out an initial MVP, right? You can build your catalog, register some users. Your service catalog might have a lot of repos, so you can decide who owns what is connected to other things, right? I definitely encourage everyone to go try it out, have a couple pages in your service catalog, build out some basic self-service actions, and it'll give you a good idea of how Portal works. So I do want to move into a quick demo also of a more mature implementation of the portal. So this is going to be in our demo environment, which is also publicly accessible. I'll drop, or Gus, if you would like to drop the link for that in our chat. But this, you can follow along with me right now, but what this is more of a representation of a highly mature implementation, as I was mentioning earlier. So maybe something to kind of work towards over a few years, really to demonstrate the art of the possible. So you're going to see a lot of different catalog pages. You're going to see like almost 50 different self-service actions that have been set up in here. Again, meant to represent what you can do with Port. So feel free to follow along with me right now as I walk through it or play around with it later, but it definitely has a lot of cool ideas on how you can get started. All right, so we're going to start off in catalog. So once you've connected your tools, something that you can do automatically with minimal manual setup, as we saw earlier, Port gives you this unified software catalog. So this is going to be your central view of everything that matters across your platform. Right, like we showed earlier, developers often juggle many tabs, right? They're jumping between different tools to plan their workday, respond to issues, and just maintain context. And Port is bringing all of that into a single view. Also, I just want to point out, when you first pop into the service catalog page, this is in the demo environment showing all of the different services that exist in our landscape. However, we also have this broken down by the different personas. So under the developer persona, I have a separate page called My Services, which is a curated subset of the services that are relevant just for me as a developer. Now, if we pop one of these services open, we see a lot more information, right? We see the owning teams, the language, right? The monitoring dashboards. We have links directly to those, the GitHub URL, all these different dashboards relevant for me, like MTTR, a change failure rate, vulnerability information, and all of this again is customizable. So all of this information, this data lives in Port, but you can choose what to surface via dashboards that you create. The next thing that's very, very important and unique to Port here is this Related Entities tab. So here you can see all of the different tools that you have connected to Port and how they relate for this specific service. So you can see any Jira issues related to this service, any SonarQube issues. You can see which cloud resources are related to the service, your Dependabot alerts, Sneak vulnerabilities, any New Relic alerts, so SonarQube. So all of your different tools, once they have been connected to Port, you'd be able to see that without, having to switch between different tabs. Sometimes developers may not necessarily have licenses for all these different tools, but they can just see everything right from within Port, so they don't even necessarily need those licenses. So really, whatever you want to include in your catalog, it's all right here. So also, let's say I'm a new developer. When I log in, I'm brought straight to my services, right? I'm working on, there's no need to chase down links or ping someone for access, right? So we've seen customers really save time here on onboarding, saving time for not just the developers who are onboarding, but also for their mentors and managers. Like, for example, let's take a look at order service. I can even see whether something has been where they are in their life cycle. Like we talked about earlier, we can see any vulnerability flags, feature flags. We can see the README immediately, the API spec. So I know also how the service actually works. And then any dashboards again in straight from that overview page. So immediately as a new developer or a new engineer, I'm able to just quickly understand how to be helpful and how to contribute even in my first few days without necessarily having to, um, you know, get that information from other people. So let's talk a little bit about getting things done, for example, like shipping a feature. So let's say you're a new developer, you've been working on a feature that you want to ship to production, but you want to first push it out to a test environment. In many organizations, a new developer might need to follow, a long checklist to accomplish that, right? They'd need to create a ticket, then request access, then get pipeline permissions, then retrieve API keys, right? So it's slow, you lose context, you're waiting around. But with port self-service, the experience is way smoother, right? So let's say as a new developer, I've maybe familiarized myself with the order service. I know what's going on. Um, I know who to talk to. I know who the owning team is. And I mean, without even having to click into the service, I can already see all that information, right? I know who the last committer was, and now I just want to test a fix in the dev environment. So I can actually kick off a self-service action right from this page. I know I showed self-service action, this self-service actions page previously, which is this, and we'll come back to this page in just a second here. But I do want to emphasize that you can also kick off self-service actions right from your service catalog page. So these are my day 2 operations. I'm going to find, let's see if I can find it, deploy an image. So here I can select an image. So I want to maybe find the hotfix that I've been working on. Let's see if it pops up here. There we go. I'll choose my environment. I want to deploy it in a staging environment. And then I'm going to click execute. And I can actually look at the progress of my self-service action in real time. So I can see my log stream, just a summary of what happened here, and that's it, right? I got my instant feedback. It's in staging. There were no tickets, no manual approvals, no waiting. So a good rule that I've seen kind of put in self-service action is that if a process can be boiled down to a checklist, it can be turned into a self-service action port.
Sorry, Antara and Gus, there is a question from Jim in the Q&A there. It says, you're showing off all these integrations like Sonar, Cube, Sneak, etc., but are these just links to those services? Does Port not pull in info from said services and allow you to create customized dashboards with information from multiple services?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding the question correctly, we do actually pull in information from all those different services, and then you have the option of creating customized dashboards based on the data that will now kind of live in Port. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry, I didn't hear who it came from also.
It came from Jim.
Okay, yeah. Does that help, Jim?
And Jim, the real power is then creating the relationships between all of these tools. So it's not just, you pull in Sneak or pull in SonarQube, but how they relate to one another. And you can basically replicate your ecosystem inside Port. So everything becomes discoverable and everything. So if you're trying to inner source better or so you can see here, Antara showing all the related entities. So you can build a whole picture of it. Antara, do you mind going on the graph? Yeah, perfect. Exactly. So sorry, I'll leave it with you, Antara, but yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Gus. Yeah, the graph is a little bit messy in our demo environment because there's just so many different tools. But the point that Gus is making, of course, is that you can see the which tools are related to a particular service, how they all relate to each other. Um, and then also, and I don't typically love showing this in demos, but I think it does kind of drive home the point of how how you can build relationships within Port. So this is the builder page. This is kind of the um, where everything kind of lives in port. You can see, and again, in this demo environment, because we just have so many different tools, it's a little bit more complex than what your builder might look like when you first sign up. But here you can create those relationships. Like, for example, you have your Wiz issue related to a cloud resource, right? Or a Kubernetes resource is related to a Kubernetes node. And you can create both like one-to-one relationships, one-to-many. So this is the reason why Port is as flexible as it is, especially in comparison to some of our competitors. I hope that helped, Jim, and please continue to, ask any further questions about this because this is kind of a very important part of why Port works the way it does. All right, so let's move into, do a quick time check. All right, let's move into a use case for self-service actions, more about around provisioning resources. So let's say that I've been here a couple weeks at my new job as a developer, and I'm working on the pricing service. So let's head back to our catalog and open up our pricing service. So I know how to deploy something into an environment, but let's say that I need an S3 bucket for something. Maybe I need a currency conversion. I need a little bit of data in a bucket. So I could open up a ticket. I could wait for someone to address it, but that's very painful, right? So we're going to head back and click on our self-service actions. So instead, I could just open up a PR here for creating an S3 bucket. It's right on top. So let's say as an example that the infrastructure code and source code live in the same repo, and I just want to create a new bucket. So let's put in my bucket name. And I want it to be set to private. And let's just execute that. Again, we can see our run happening. So I can open a pull request directly, say from a repo that contains both the infrastructure and application code. I can also select public in the bucket visibility if I wanted. And then with a role-based access control, right, we can configure it so that if I had selected public, the request would need approval. If it was private, it would proceed automatically. Derry, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So when you executed that action there, under the hood, is that being executed on some sort of port cloud compute? Is it using like GitHub Actions or something under the hood?
Yeah, so it can use GitHub Actions, but what it's really doing is calling upon a workflow or a unit of work that you create in your backend. So really, yeah, so the point of self-service actions within Port is to create like a front end, a standardized front end for developers to access any workflows that you already have.
Perfect. And let's say, for example, I have been able to do this on a different CI tool, like or GitHub Actions or Circle CI, whatever it is. Jim kind of touched on that point already. Am I then able to get information from that self-service action? Like, am I able to ping GitHub or Circle CI to get the outcome of that pipeline back into port?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. You can get it back into port and then actually take it a step further and use that information to update your catalog page, for example, within port or make any other changes or maybe even like trigger an automation based on that.
Okay. Okay, cool. And what is the best way to do that? Like just I guess start tracking pipelines from GitHub, for example, and then getting that information back.
I think I'm gonna let Gus take this one.
Sure.
You.
Sorry, I missed the question. So ask again.
So let's just say I want to create an S3 bucket using a self-service action. I configure it to run on GitHub Actions.
Yeah.
How can I then track the outcome of that pipeline? So it's building, it's deploying, and it's successful. It's all happening on GitHub Actions under the hood.
Yeah.
How can I basically get that information back into port?
So we have you use the port API as part of your GitHub Actions workflow. So you can see the logs where Antara's mouse is now,
Yeah.
that log stream. So you push. So as part of your workflow, you'll push sort of success, failure information from the actions to port. So then the developer can see what's going on.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
I'll send an example of that as well. We've got one in the guide. So you should
Appreciate
see.
it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the question, Jerry, and Gus, as always. So one other quick example I wanted to go through of a self-service action that will kind of lead us into talking about automations as well. So again, as an example, let's say we need to test a larger feature across multiple services, right? Maybe I want to test something across currency, order, and pricing service. So what I'm going to do is create a new developer environment. So that's my self-service action here. Also, just as a quick note, you can see here there's a ton of different self-service actions in our demo environment. This is all just meant to give you an example of what kind of actions you can set up. These aren't necessarily, going to be like, for example, and this is my private environment that I just set up with you. Like these are the ones that come out of the box, again, depending on the different tools that you select. So that is all just to say that I don't want anyone to kind of get overwhelmed seeing all of these different self-service actions. But back to our example. So let's just put in my environment name. We'll call it services dev environment. We'll give it an owning name. I'm just going to do team vision. And then we'll choose a time to life. We'll just do 1 day. And then services, we're going to do our checkout service, or I think our currency service. Let's see, pricing and order. And then hit execute. Again, we can take a look at that in progress. It's created instantly, right? No one had to file a ticket. I got my immediate feedback. But now if I go back into my service catalog and look at my developer environments, so that's actually going to be under the FinOps developer persona here. Let's look at that. So I can see the environment that I just created, but after 1 day, whose responsibility is it to shut that environment down, right? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be the DevSecOps team? Is it my manager? Now, instead of going through all that, figuring that out, with port automations, it's covered. So you can trigger cleanup actions based on any property, like this timer property, for example. And here we have several examples of this as well in our automations tab. So we have the TTL expiry. We can terminate an ephemeral environment. We can just send a message when a TTL expires. Right, so when it gets to a certain level, we can either automatically terminate it. Let's actually pop one of these backends open so you can see what it looks like. So this is all super customizable. You have full access to the catalog, and you can also trigger based on any entity creation or any entity update. So that's what we just did, right? We created an entity or any manual property change. So you can either automatically just remove the environment or send a message, right, reminding the developer to do so. So again, many examples here, but you can kind of set up based on whatever custom automations you can think of based on properties changing or entities being created, etc. Just want to take a quick pause before we talk about our next topic, which is scorecards and DORA metrics. We're also have about 15 minutes left, so definitely get any questions in as you think of them. Feel free to just come off mute or put them in the chat.
I think chat should be working now. So if anyone sees my chat, I'm putting the links in there. Let me know.
Perfect. All right.
Oh, it's working. Thanks, Terry.
Yay. Great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about scorecards. We're gonna pop into authentication service to take a look at them. We have our scorecards tab here. Um, so, currently you might have some kind of company-wide DORA aggregator or any other kind of standard that you follow, but not all services need the same standards, right? Some may drag the overall average down or just might not be tracked correctly. So with scorecards in port, everything is customizable. You can view DORA metrics by service. You can see like lead time, deployment frequency, MTTR. It really gives visibility into how services are performing. And then you can also reward teams that are consistently meeting or exceeding thresholds. Um, so for example, if I own the service, the authentication service, I can see how a slight improvement in maybe deployment frequency would push me into a higher performance tier. And that's at the service level. But we can also view these metrics from a higher level from more of a leadership standpoint. So if we head into DORA metrics under the SVP, um, we can view kind of what are the changes or what are the results of the changes that we've made. So here you can see things like MTTR, right? Average monthly changes or average monthly MTTR. You can see kind of trends across your services and teams as well in the scorecard overview page. Identify maybe any bottlenecks, launch initiatives based on the data here. So we're actually going to just show what that looks like. So we have a couple different initiative examples. So here it's based on the PRs that are coming in that have sonar projects. So we have PRs without sonar analysis. So you can take as a leader if you wanted to take a look at that. And then you can even kick off a self-service action directly from this page just to add tags to a SonarQube project. So you can actually kind of improve upon all the things that you're measuring from within port, also from within port. So we're really kind of closing the loop all within the same portal here. All right, so almost wrapping up here. Is anyone on the call? I know AI, like everyone is starting to use AI tools. So does anyone use like GitHub Copilot or any other tools right now? Feel free to kind of pop it in the chat. But in our public demo, we've added insights on how those tools actually affect your engineering performance, right? Everyone's using these tools, but how do you know if they're actually making an impact? So we have our AI code assistant usage page. So here we're pulling usage metrics from the GitHub API. We're tracking active users. We're analyzing code completion's acceptance rate. So are people actually accepting the code that Copilot is offering? And then quality, right? Monitoring bug density and DORA metrics over time. And then you can actually calculate the time savings by comparing historical feature delivery speed pre and post Copilot. So just like a handy thing here that we've included to kind of measure the effectiveness of your AI assistants. All right, so I'm going to head back to the slides and just quickly talk about Engineering 360, which was a fairly recent launch for us. It's really just about taking what we already do with helping engineering organizations, taking that one step further. So we want you to be able to gather insights and prioritize efforts and turn feedback into visible outcomes. So now you can survey your engineering operations and security and other teams to first surface any frustrations that they may have, and then back up that sentiment with any quantitative metrics, including using frameworks like DORA. And then once those blockers are actually identified, Port provides the automation and workflows to resolve them, measure them, and then just build a culture basically of continuous improvement all from within this tool. So it's not just necessarily about improving visibility, but also increasing velocity. So As an example, your developers might, have requests for their management right now, but it can get lost in documentation or in email, Slack messages, right? There's many different ways that we're all communicating. So in Port, you can actually create in-app surveys for your developers without having to access any third-party tools. So let's just search for survey. You can write a survey response, respond to a developer experience survey as well. And then if you actually go into catalog, you can look at the results of that survey. So I'm just going to search. Here we have our developer or DevX survey. So platform leaders can review them, take action, and then they can actually push out a feature in Port that addresses the developer's concern and then close that loop by saying, notifying the recipients, letting them know, like, you spoke, we listened, this is what we changed, and then sending that notification via self-service action. So that kind of wraps up the presentation. I know that was a lot, so we can just quickly talk about like where to begin. So we found that kind of the best use case sits at the intersection of high value, right? How can you meaningfully improve your workflow? High demand, you want your developers to be in here daily, and then easy to implement. So lowest effort possible to launch. It might not be necessarily something as complex as scaffolding a new service. It could be something as simple as creating a secret or requesting access to a cloud resource, right? As I mentioned, we do want you to be able to go in here right out of the gate and maybe just have a couple catalog pages and create some very basic self-service actions, maybe based on existing GitHub actions that you already have or existing Terraform workflows. So to actually help with this, we have the Port Roadmap Planner, and I'll drop this link into the chat right now. So what this will do is basically help you define a user story, right? Just define a workflow of what you want to achieve through Port, and then choose a persona, kind of describe your current state and identify the opportunity. And then we also have within that planner a lot of real world ideas from customers and prospects who've had success building in Port, so you can use those as examples as well, in addition to all of the examples in our demo environment, just to kind of get started and start playing around in Port. But yeah, that kind of wraps up the presentation. Happy to take questions, comments, just generally hear how you felt about Port so far. Yeah, go ahead, Derry.
Okay, great. And Dara, thanks very much for walking us through that. That's been super useful. Learned a lot, and yeah, really appreciate you putting that together. And your teammate also, whose name I can't see, like Gus, I think, is it? Anyway, thank you both for putting all this together. I have a quick question. Um, that I just want to ask in terms of like, so if I was to set up a self-service action and what I want to do is clone repo A, like I want to clone a GitHub repo A, and then I want to create GitHub repo B with the contents of the clone from GitHub repo A. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I've been able to do that so far, leveraging a Circle CI pipeline under the hood, or a GitHub Actions pipeline, which just if the terminology is better for you. But I have been recommended to use a cookie cutter template to handle this workflow. And I'm just wondering, what are the benefits of using a cookie cutter template other than just leveraging a Circle CI config file or a GitHub Actions config file?
Oh, that's a good question. You want to take a stab at it, Gus? You're in mute, I guess.
Sorry, I'm not sure I completely understood. So what's the advantage of using a cookie cutter template? So yeah, sorry, explain that to me again. So your scenario is you've got two repositories. Maybe you want to use one as a template and put it into another. Yeah, sorry, can you talk me through that again?
Yeah, so if you imagine I'm a platform team and I have one centralized repository called GitHub Repo A, and in
Yeah.
here I have a React template, a Java template, and a Python template.
Yeah.
I want to clone that in the self-service action. I want to clone that repository.
Yeah.
Um, and then based on what a developer puts in the self-service action, I want to create a template out of the React template, for example. So I'll create
Yeah.
GitHub repo B with the contents of either the React, Java, Python, etc.
Yeah.
I'm doing that today under the hood. I'm leveraging a Circle CI pipeline
Yeah.
with a number of jobs, job A, job B, to do those actions. And I'm just wondering, um, instead of just writing the Circle CI config, raw config, why would I leverage a cookie cutter template?
Why would you? I mean, it's up to you how you do it. So it's just to kind of help you out the box. So you took cookie cutter template, like one of our ones.
Yeah,
And
or going through the process, and it like that could, you could have answered my question just there. If it's working for me leveraging a Circle CI
yeah,
pipeline, I'm happy to continue with that process. It's just I was kind of advised to go down the other route with cookie cutter templates at the minute, and I'm just not sure what the advantage is or if there is one.
I'd have to look into a bit more, but I think basically you know, there's things like it gives you logs, and because it's natively done in port,
Okay.
it, you know, there will be some advantages there, but it's built by us, but I will have to check for you exactly what those are. But I think if it's working for you, I think it's fine, but I'll check that for you.
Okay. Okay. Cool. No worries. Appreciate that. And yeah, again, appreciate both of your times today.
No worries.
Just to kind of add on to the benefits of potentially using a cookie cutter template in port specifically, I think one of the primary advantages is just that overall kind of standardization, right? If you have, your Circle CI pipeline, maybe you have some other pipelines written in Terraform or whatever other tooling for your developers, like from a more bird's eye view perspective, when your developers are coming in here and either kicking off the action that you described of cloning a repo or whatever else it may be, they don't necessarily need to know what if it's a Circle CI pipeline or just a cookie cutter template, they can just come into port and kick off an action, and they have that standardized front end. Um, and then with a cookie cutter template, you can also just prompt users for input and dynamically generate any files or configurations, and it would be more tailored to a new project. So I think those are really the main benefits. But like Gus said, I mean, the back end is really whatever is easy and works for you. The goal here is just to ensure that when developers are coming in and kicking off an action, it's standardized for them, and there's no scope for, any ambiguity or any mistakes when they're kicking off an action, because all they're doing is putting in whatever input and then hitting execute, right?
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other questions. Jim, I saw that you wrote about the MCP server. I answered that vaguely, but we are going to be releasing that very soon. It's an open source MPC server that we're using, and we'll provide a Docker container image and Python package so you can get started with it quickly. So there'll be some materials coming out on that, and I'll make sure I post them in the community when that is available. And it'll be in our changelog and various other places. So look forward to that. And I think that that's probably a wrap. So thank you everyone for spending time with us. And I hope you got a clearer picture of getting started with Port and some ideas on how it can work for your team. Thanks again to Antara and Gus so much for hosting and sharing your insights today. Feel free to, if you're not already on our Slack community, I put the link in the Zoom chat there once it was finally working. So feel free to join us and you can ask more questions and get some updates from there. So again, appreciate it and hope everyone has a great day.